What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Bowl Sunday. By the time you hear this, it'll be Monday's version of the Coach and the Couch Potato. As always, I'm Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we've got Coach Slate, who is looking absolutely dapper today. What's going on, Coach?
Oh, nothing, man. Went to church this morning with the family, and there were no tears. So it is a win all around. The baby was great. Got to see my in-laws, so it was good. It was really good, man. How you doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Just finished up watching some Indiana Tech Warriors bowling this morning.
There we go.
Huge collegiate bowling tournament. Not a bad showing. Finished 10th out of like 78 teams.
Okay.
Uh, last tournament before the postseason. So keep building off of it. Hopefully those boys can make a couple runs. They'll have hopefully NAIA Nationals and then USBCs. So let's
Absolutely,
hope
man.
good things to come on that front.
For sure. Hopefully big things, man.
Yeah. So speaking of big things, never a dull moment in Buckeye world since we started this venture. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I actually had somebody mention that to me yesterday. He was like, the Buckeyes have been just content machines ever since you guys started this thing,
Yeah.
and he's not wrong.
No, man.
Last week and the week before, it was all about being excited about Bill O'Brien. Who we're not going to refer to as former Ohio State offensive coordinator and Ohio State legend, Bill O'Brien. I'm sure that anybody that's listening to this has heard, Bill has left us at the altar.
Yep.
Actually, it's more of a divorce.
Yeah.
We'll call it a disillusion.
There we go. That's better. That's better.
He has taken the head coaching job at Boston College. And we can blame Jeff Hafley again, I guess.
Again, what the heck, man?
So yeah, there's a lot of talk out there. Bill's a Boston guy.
Yep.
And there's some family stuff there. The family didn't come with him to Columbus. And obviously this job wasn't open when he took the job at OSU. Yeah. So you can't, circumstances change, especially in today's college football world.
For sure.
So yeah, with him leaving, it opened up some doors though, and then the way this offseason has gone, it's like we don't rebuild, we reload.
Yeah, I guess so, man. I guess so. Now the Bill O'Brien thing, like Coach O'Brien, that's the dark side of coaching, man. That is the toughest thing. You have ideas that you want to be a head coach, and you take a job, and you know that it's going to possibly be a stepping stone for you to get to where you need to go. And then boom, something else pops open, and it's like, is this what's best for me and the fam? And I was excited to see what Coach O'Brien was going to bring. I like his fire and his attitude. I felt like that was going to be something really good for our offense. But you can never fault a man for doing what he feels is best for him and his family. You touched that he's a Boston guy, and a situation with the son. I actually went back last week when he was with the Texans, and watched a documentary or special that ESPN had on him and his relationship with his son. And it was just crazy, like what his kid has to go through every single day. And not just his kid, but what his wife has to go through every single day as well. And so you can never forget about your significant other when it comes to coaching. And she has sacrificed so much. I'm sure it was something that she was encouraging Coach O'Brien to go after. And, does it suck for us? Yeah, but I'm happy for him if he's doing this and it's the best thing for his family. It's closer to home, and he doesn't know how much time he's going to have with this kid. So I can't fault the man for wanting to be around the family a lot more.
Absolutely. Obviously, we're both parents.
Yep.
Having gone through the college search and everything like that, even it family trumps all. And his other son is like a half hour away playing college baseball. So for him personally, it's a win-win, and to get to be in charge of a program again.
Absolutely.
And honestly, the head coach job at BC is probably a little less stressful than the OC job at OSU.
Yeah. Yeah, BC, you
Uh,
could go win 8 games a year and, stay there for the rest of your career if you want to.
yeah, I do think it'll be interesting to see, what kind of relationships he had already built with the roster. Um, I feel like he did bring a little bit of an edge, especially to the offense. So we'll see, what we hear, coming out of that and those type of things. Um, but as has been par for the course, Ohio State had a plan B ready, and it was ready quick. It was like 3 hours after the BC announcement came out that Chip Kelly from UCLA had his meeting with his team, telling him he was leaving. Um, and this isn't like this is a quarterback's coach taking a
No.
position up. This is a head coach of a 2B Big Ten team leaving to come be the OC at another
Oh,
Big Ten
man.
team. Um, I know you're, a defensive guy, but what does Chip bring?
Yeah, man. Well, the first thing, college football is just a different beast now. To think that a head coach of a Big Ten program, of a storied program like UCLA, is going to step away to be the OC for the Buckeyes is just mind blowing. And like you said, he's not a young coach. He's 60 years old. He's been around forever. So, no, but Chip Kelly, honestly, um, in my eyes, he is an offensive guru. I think a lot of the things that he did when he was with Oregon, all that time as a head coach, I mean, he really put Oregon on the map. No offense to Coach Bellotti before him, who had Joey Harrington and some really good players, but I think Coach Kelly took Oregon to another level, and it was because of the offense that they ran. It was very up tempo, really worked to attack the perimeter. And my favorite thing about him during that time was he was players, not plays. He was, I'm going to get the ball into our playmakers' hands, and I'm going to go let them, like Booby Miles, I'm going to go let them spin. Let me spin, coach. I think of LaMichael James and DeAnthony Thomas and Kenyon Barner and those type of running backs that he had. It was a fun offense to watch. Obviously, he had some time in the NFL as well. Mixed bag, with the Eagles, 2 solid years. Um, and then his last year there wasn't the greatest. And then he had 1 year in San Francisco, which was a nightmare. From what everybody says online, I think he went 2-14. Um, but that doesn't take away from what he brings as an offensive coach. The one thing I really do love about him is his rushing acumen. He is able to create and find mismatches or uh, valuable matchups for the offense. And that's one of the things I really love about him. Not even talking about his time at Oregon. Let's talk about his last 5 or 6 years that he's been the head coach at UCLA. He's had a top 20 rushing attack since 2020. So that's a big thing. UCLA doesn't have the greatest talent or the best talent, the top tier talent, but he's found a way to rush the ball. He's averaged over the last 4 years that he was at UCLA, he's averaged over 220 yards rushing per game. That's crazy. 220 yards rushing per game. And that's over 5.2 yards per carry that he's averaged over that their offenses have averaged over the last 4 years at UCLA. And I think honestly, thinking about the Buckeyes, thinking about where we want to be, knowing that we have to run the ball, I think we're going to see a lot of those same concepts that he had with UCLA. The 2022 season is a season that I think Buckeye fans should really pay attention to if you're looking up stuff on Chip Kelly and their offense. They had Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR, and they had Zach Charbonnet in the backfield. And that offense was explosive. They were dynamic. They really did a good job of trying to attack the perimeter in the run game. They also did a good job of marrying a lot of zone scheme stuff with some gap scheme stuff as well. And I'll talk about what zone scheme and gap scheme means here in a second. But I think, that good mix will do some great things for us with the Buckeyes. Obviously, with who we have in the backfield, with Will Howard at quarterback. We got 2 studs in the backfield. We got guys that we just need to find ways to get the ball into their hands in creative ways. And if anybody's going to be able to get creative with this roster, it's going to be Chip Kelly. So I'm excited for it, man. I think that it's really, really awesome that we got Chip Kelly. I can't even wrap my head around the fact that, this guy who is a legend in the game is going to be our offensive coordinator. One word that we used to use with the Marion City Schools, synergy. Synergy was always something that we used. And I think between Ryan Day getting his mentor to be his offensive coordinator, and you add that to the fact that Justin Fry was Chip Kelly's offensive line coach at UCLA, I think we're going to see a ton of synergy between those three guys. And I think our offense and our run game specifically is going to take a big, big jump this offseason and obviously in the 2024 as well. So I'm excited for it, man. I think it's going to be great. I think he brings a lot. Obviously, he's going to be coaching the quarterbacks. And I think he's going to have a good one that really fits, the scheme that he wants to run. So I'm excited about it, man. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, Chip Kelly was fast before fast was a thing.
Yeah.
Watching those, staying up the 10 p.m. Eastern time games, and that was always fun because you didn't know what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Michael James was kind of almost the biggest back he had. That dude was a bruiser, but he was still fast.
Yep.
D'Anthony Thomas and Kenyon Barner, talk about dudes that were fast.
Yeah.
So that was fun. You kind of hit on what he's done. One thing that stood out to me when you combine his time at Oregon, his time in the league, and then even UCLA, he's had 9 top 10 scoring offenses.
Yeah.
So no matter where he goes, he scores. The weakness at Oregon was always the defense, and that's a luxury that he's never had. Is the defense that he's going to have today. Give me the triple option with Will Howard, Travion, and Quinshawn. Let's just go. I mean,
let's do it.
It was really cool to see, like you said, UCLA, he never had talent. I mean, he had, DTR was a super high recruit.
Yeah.
And he made Zach Charbonnet look like a stud when he transferred out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, he did, man.
And, and now Zach's in the league. And killing it with the Seahawks in that multi-headed attack that they've got. So yeah, it's a really, really cool move. I mean, obviously the big question out there is why do you leave a big program to essentially take a step down? There was an interview he gave at some point. It was either right at the end of the season or at the beginning of the off season. And dude just looked exhausted. We've talked about the changes in the game and, with NIL and the coaching carousel and the transfer portal. And you could I took it listening to the interview as this is a dude who does not want to be responsible for the entire show.
Yeah.
So now, he's always been a play caller everywhere he goes. So now you get to come still call plays. You're still in charge of the offense, which was your strong suit. You're not going to have to be the guy out there on the road recruiting. We've seen Ryan Day logging as many air miles as Taylor Swift in the last 2 months. I mean, it's one thing he does. You don't see Knowles on the road a lot either, and that's okay. Way more about the intricacies of college coaching staffs and stuff like that. But those guys really are in charge of their groups.
Yeah.
Ryan is the CEO now. He's got 2 head coaches underneath him. And, at this point, let's get to September and see what we've got.
Yeah. Yeah. No, then that's, and you hit on something there with college coaching and obviously the landscape of things and the way things are changing. You listened to Ryan Day in his press conference the other day, and he flat out said he didn't want to give up play calling, but he knows he has to. And you think of what Ryan Day has brought to us offensively over, since 2017 when he got here, right? Was it 2017 when he got here? Yeah.
I believe
17
or 18.
Yeah, 17 or 18. Since he's got here, our offense has been phenomenal. And now he's saying, I'm going to give up the play calling that got me my job. That's not an easy thing to do. We don't get into coaching to be the CEO. We don't get into coaching to go shake hands and kiss babies all the time. We don't get into coaching to go say, hey, we need some more money if you want us to continue to get these top recruits. It's not why people get into coaching. You get into coaching because of the impact you can make on the kids, and you just love to coach ball. Like, you just love the game of football. And so Chip Kelly is a football guy. I mean, he is a football guy. I just watched an interview with him yesterday, and he was talking about when he was at New Hampshire and Ryan Day was his quarterback. They were running the Delaware wing tee. Like, that's old school, like Vince Lombardi type stuff. And, you think about that, like, he's just a football guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to help his guys win games. And, you talked about being exhausted. If you're being the CEO and you're calling plays and you're meeting with donors, you're meeting with boosters, and you got an AD that is on you for not winning enough games, and you've lost your rivalry game a ton, it wears you down. I mean, and I know it on a much, much smaller scale where I'm making a small stipend. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars, and the pressure of the whole world is on them. And, at some point, especially somebody who's 60 years old like he is, you kind of just want to end your career doing what you love, and that's coaching ball. And I think Coach Day and the Buckeyes are going to allow him to do that. My biggest concern is that he's one and done. That is my biggest concern. I hope, I know he signed a 3-year contract. I hope he fulfills that 3-year contract, because if he does, our offense over the next couple years is going to be pretty special. So that is one of my biggest concerns, man. But, he's able to get back to just being the football guy that he is, and doesn't have to worry about going to meet with donors and boosters and all that. So I hope and I believe this is going to be a perfect situation for him.
Yeah, I'm with you on the longevity concern for sure. I know we talked about it the other day when everything went down, and ideally you would like to see the 2 years that Urban used to get out of his guys. I
Yep.
feel like if you can get 2 solid years of Chip, then I think at that point, Heartline's ready. I think we're close anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
And that guy is obviously in and of his own, and that'll be discussed later, I'm sure, as we discuss our Mount Rushmore of OSU assistant coaches.
Yeah.
But it's really cool with the whole Chip thing. It's not real common in the football world to see things come 360 degrees. I mean, I know everybody knows that he's Ryan's mentor,
Yep.
but Ryan played for this guy. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the equivalent of Coach Hinton getting a job and you going to be on staff with him.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And so I think the only concern on that front, as much as we think it's going to be a good thing, he has been known to be not so much finesse and a whole lot of flash at times. I think he's
Yeah.
gotten away from that, but it's the Big Ten, and
Yeah.
it's cliche, but even like Alabama, I've always said Alabama plays football like a Big Ten team, and
Mhm.
Georgia does essentially too. At times they're going to run the ball down your throat, and I hope that we can get to that point. And that's 11 strong. That was kind
Absolutely.
of a weakness. We saw it against Missouri. We didn't run the ball great at all. So hopefully old habits aren't falling into. I guess that'd be my other one.
Yeah. Earlier I said I would talk about the difference between zone and gap scheme. So I'm going to touch on that before I make this next point. So when you hear me or Jeremy say zone scheme or gap scheme, when we talk about zone scheme, try to think of it as, you're getting water in the basement, right? And the water is just going to find a way. You don't have any cracks in the foundation, but it's just going to find a way to get into the basement, right? You got an older house, you don't know exactly where it's coming from, but it's just finding a way. So when we talk about zone scheme, think of it that way. The offensive line is blocking, and they're blocking in a way to make sure that the running back is able to find a way to find a hole. It may not be the same exact spot every time. Sometimes the hole may have to bounce outside. Sometimes you have to cut it back inside. So when you hear us talk about zone scheme, try to think of it as that way. When you hear us talk about gap scheme, all right, now you're talking about water in the basement. Now you got a crack in the foundation, right? It's pouring down rain, and there's only one spot where that rain is going, and it's going right there, and you know it every single time. Well, that's gap scheme. Gap scheme is the ball supposed to hit in a certain gap. So A gap, B gap, C gap. That's where the ball is supposed to go. And if it doesn't go there, the play is probably going to be stopped. So when you hear me talk about that, my father-in-law kind of said, "Hey, just heads up. Sometimes when you say these things, I have no idea what you're saying." And I was like, you know what? That's a great point, Steve. I get going and I apologize. So when you hear us talk about those things, that's what we're saying. Um, I have good reason to believe, based on his recent running success with UCLA, that we will see a good marriage of both zone and gap scheme. He ran a lot of counter GT, which is the guard and the tackle pulling at the same time. He did a lot of that in that 2022 season, and he coupled that with the quarterback run game as well. And he created so much eye candy for the defense before and after the snap that it was able to create those flashy, explosive plays, but using those old school gap scheme concepts as well. So I think we're going to get a good marriage of that based on the film that I've watched from 2022. Like, hopefully we can do a film breakdown soon. I talked to Jake Burns about helping me figure that stuff out, but that I think we're going to see a good marriage of it. So right when you talk about the concerns, the flash is something that does worry me too. But I think at UCLA, he really had to lock in on the technique and the fundamentals of things. And that's why I think you saw his run game start to be extremely explosive his last 4 years with UCLA.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're getting technical, because we're going to talk about the defensive line in a second, why don't you do us a solid? And a lot of people, when we hear certain players described on the D line, you hear, this guy's a 3 tech, or
Yeah.
this guy's a true nose. Give us a little crash course on that real quick, if you don't mind. That way we kind of link it up to the O-line discussion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So defensive line, we'll talk specific to Ohio State. So they play in a 4-man front traditionally. Hopefully that changes a little bit this year. But they play in a 4-man front traditionally. And what you'll see is you'll have what we call a strong side defensive end. The strong side defensive end, or 5 technique, and that's his position on the offensive lineman. The 5 technique is going to typically be your bigger, more stout guy who's there to stop the run. You would see Jack Sawyer in that spot quite a bit if you're comparing it to who we have on the roster right now. So those guys are really there to set the edge, make sure the ball doesn't get outside, and we've just got to be as physical as you can. They are decent pass rushers. They can get to the quarterback, but they're not, they're the elite pass rushers that somebody like a JT would be. When you talk about a nose guard, you talk about Tyleik Williams, right? The nose guard is a 1 technique. Sometimes it's a 2-eye, which is inside shade of the guard, or sometimes it's head up on the guard. Those are your big guys with the bellies, right? You want those guys to eat up that A gap, and he's got to force 2 people to block him. The next person we get into is a 3 technique, or the defensive tackle. Those guys are your bigger guys, but they're athletic, right? They can create a lot of penetration. You think about this year's team, you think about Mike Hall. Mike Hall was a fantastic 3 technique. And then the jack, or the weak side defensive end, whatever they're going to call it, it's typically your more athletic defensive end, can kind of freelance, can do different things. But on 3rd down, 3rd and long, he's going to go get after the quarterback. So those, you got your jack, or your weak side defensive end, and your strong side defensive end on the outside. And you've got your nose and your tackle on the inside. And that typically makes up what Ohio State's doing up front. There's a lot of different variations of that, a lot of different personnel that you could have there. But in a basic sense, that's what you're going to see every Saturday from the Buckeyes.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think
Yep.
that'll help, as we try to to really bring all that together. Where we get a little technical sometimes, and we do, probably not explain as well as we could.
Yeah.
You're way better at that side of life than me. I mean, like, it's one of those that I still think of. My strong side end is the guy just going to the strong side of the formation. I mean,
Yeah.
it's way simpler for me.
Yeah.
But the reason we hit on the D line is we've talked about this since we started this project. We still have a 10th coach opening,
Yes.
and obviously, as we've said, we've beat the dead horse. The easy solution is James Laurinaitis, but Coach Day said something this week that makes me think we're not getting that.
Yeah.
It was Wednesday, and he said we're about a week out from having this cemented. Well, the only thing that could really throw, that time frame out there would be if it's somebody that's still coaching.
Yeah.
So obviously that means it's an NFL guy, we think. You look through the Chiefs coaching staff, you look through the Niners coaching staff, and to me, the solution or the most likely candidate sticks out like a sore thumb. I think it's Daryl Tapp.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't really think of that guy until you said something to me about it. And you look at where he played when he was in the NFL, and it kind of matches up, especially with who we're bringing in as the offensive coordinator. I don't know how his relationship was with Coach Kelly when he was there with the Eagles, but it just kind of marries up. But yeah, Daryl Tapp is a guy who played in the NFL for 12 years. Playing the NFL for 12 years, you have to be, you got to be pretty good. NFL stands for not for long. And if you're stick around for 12 years, you must be doing something right. His most notable stints were with the Seahawks and the Eagles. So he was in Philadelphia. I think his last year in Philly was Chip's first year in Philly. I got to double check that, but I think that's the way it matched up. But yeah, he's a current assistant defensive line coach with the Niners. NFL experience at the college level, recruits eat that up. And they know that you had success at the next level, at the highest level. They want to learn. They want to learn. They want to get as much knowledge from you as they can get. You see that with Coach Hartline right now. Coach Hartline has, played in the NFL for 8 or 9 years, had a pretty decent career, and the kids eat that up. He knows what it takes to be successful at the NFL level, and you see that on Sundays with the success that Ohio State receivers have been having. Same thing with Tim Walton. Tim Walton coached at the highest level, in the NFL for many years. Guys like Jalen Ramsey came out and spoke very highly of him. You're seeing that stuff pay off in recruiting. So Daryl Tapp is a guy that, played 12 years, defensive end, had a pretty successful career, well-respected. Obviously is respected enough that Kyle Shanahan brought him on the staff without ever really coaching before. That is my only concern with him. He's only been coaching since 2021. But if you play in the NFL for so long, you just gain so much knowledge. You look at James Laurinaitis. He's ready to be the linebacker coach right now, and he's only been coaching for 2 years. And it's because he was a student of the game when he played, and he played in the league under so many different coaches that you just absorb so much of that information. So I'm not going to lie. Like, if this is who we get, I'd be very happy. I would love that from a recruiting standpoint. But I'm still kind of partial to James Laurinaitis. I would like to see him be the guy, but I don't think you can go wrong with either one here. I think Daryl Tapp would be a good addition. A younger guy is only 39, and the kids will be able to relate to him, and they would ask him questions all the time. What's it like going up against this guy, or how'd you beat Joe Thomas, or what I mean? Like, those are the things that the kids will gain from bringing somebody like him in. So I would support that 100%.
I think the big thing for me, on both of the fronts that you kind of hit on, obviously I would assume that this was talked about with James, because ultimately if you're bringing in another D-line coach, obviously that means that there is a succession plan being placed for Larry.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing that stands out to me about Daryl Tapp. Played at Virginia Tech. He's a DMV guy. And I'll spell that one out, as we're trying to do more with clarity. DC, Maryland, Virginia.
Yep.
Absolute freaking hotbed of high school football.
Yes.
Chase Young,
Chase
Dwayne
Young.
Haskins. Chase Young, who we're going to get to watch tonight, be coached by Daryl Tapp.
Yeah.
So I think you're filling that void of that area potentially too. And that area is extremely, extremely loyal to their own. You're seeing it with Mike Loxley at Maryland.
Yes.
Making huge inroads there. I think if you bring a guy like Tapp in, you don't lose any footing that you have in that area.
Yeah.
One quick little coaching thing, because we've had a habit of speaking things into existence as we've taken this on. I did hear a little bit of chatter that Tony Alford may be a candidate for the UCLA job.
Wow.
So
okay.
If that were to happen, I'm going down to Tennessee and I'm throwing the checkbook at the head coach of Tennessee State and bringing him home to coach our running backs. Give me Eddie right now.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. That's breaking news right here, man. I did not know that. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, you can't go wrong with Eddie George. And it might help too with on the recruiting front, because if you bring Eddie, then maybe
Eddie carries his Heisman in, hey,
yeah,
how's it going?
Carries his Heisman in. And then if you want to get even more, you want to dissect the recruiting front even more, maybe he brings back Richard McNutt with him. And now Richard McNutt is helping out at the secondary, and we kind of get his son, Trey. So it could all work out, right? There's a lot of different things that could happen.
Total speculation.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of it out there after PJ Fleck, who sounds like was the number one guy for you. He'd come out and say, I'm staying in Minnesota. There's more water to row boats and stuff up here. You don't take boats out into the ocean that much. It gets a little tumbly. So we'll see. Like I said, I just wanted to throw that out because we've spoken some things into existence already. Yeah. So I'm gonna shoot my shot.
And I'll say this, man, Coach Alford, the head coach at Findlay, and I had the opportunity the last 2 off seasons to sit in some of his meetings. He's the real deal, man. He is great, and he's a great guy. I would be extremely happy for him if he became a head coach. He's been so loyal to the Buckeyes. He's had opportunities to possibly leave, and he's really stuck around, and the running backs love him, and he's just a really good guy. So if he were to take that, it would suck for us if that were to happen. Obviously, it's just speculation, like you said. But if that happened, I'd be pumped for him, man, because he's a really good dude. And one more Daryl Tapp note. I can't think of 2 better people to put on your resume than Nick Bosa and Chase Young if you were interested in going to coach at Ohio State. You know how they feel about Larry Johnson. They called him after the NFC Championship. So you could say like, hey, yeah, so these guys love me too. So let's go ahead and make it happen. So
that would be more synergy. That's going to be our word of the day.
That's going to be our word of the day, man. Synergy.
So a program that has no synergy right now, or no moxie even at this point, if we're going to be real, is our friends up north. Yes, this is an Ohio State centered podcast, and that's our goal. But I have, just like we've never seen Ohio State have such a successful offseason, I've never seen a team, let alone the defending national champions, literally go from up here to a dumpster fire within a month. I've asked multiple Michigan fans, was it worth it? And this has nothing to do with any looming stuff that's out there, because who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows?
But at this point, you have to feel like you sold your souls to the devil, and the devil wears khakis, as our friends from 11 Warriors would say. Jim Harbaugh has absolutely gutted that program. You have lost one, two, three, four position coaches, your strength and
Yeah.
conditioning coach, and Mike Hart is MIA apparently from
Yeah.
reading the boards up there. Uh, and what's wild to me, the first little caveat is that Harbaugh's kid didn't even go with him.
Yeah.
He ended up going to Seattle.
Seattle.
You hear their fans talk, and not only did they lose four coaches, but they lost arguably their four top recruiters.
No doubt about that.
And you lose your strength and conditioning coach. We've talked about Coach Mick a little bit and what Schlegel being around the program has done on our side. Now you lose your guy who, make no bones about it. Their D line, their O line, those guys were tough. They were physical, they were tough, they were strong, and they played bully ball.
Yep.
So you've replaced one coach, I think, and that's you're bringing in Wink Martindale, who, Ohio State fans, are taking a little bit of grief from the Michigan fans. It's funny because they're like, well, Chip Kelly never beat him. It's a totally different animal.
Yes, it is.
To me, the obvious comparison, and it's probably being a little bit mean, is, are they going back to the Don Brown days? I mean,
oh man. Hey, much respect to Don Brown. I'm not gonna lie. 3-3 stack people will understand what Don Brown has done for us.
you just couldn't cover a crossing route. I mean,
yeah, he couldn't do that, but
I mean, it was like you were playing Madden out there. The crosses just killed it. I don't know. There's always going to be turnover when a coach leaves. I mean, obviously, we've seen, most of the moves OSU has made have been at their own discretion. But, you also look at Alabama. They're going through a little bit of thing. But what's going on up north is just wild. I mean, you work an hour from the border. So you interact with a lot of Michigan fans.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've heard from those guys?
Well, they're not happy. they're not happy. They feel like, they're 33 or a month or whatever days from winning a national championship, and they're losing the core of their coaching staff, and they're not happy about it. With Klink, was it Clinksdale? I just know him as Coach Klink. Yeah, Clinksdale and Elston. You could have just lost those two guys, and that would have been extremely detrimental to the defense. Mike Elston is the real deal. When he was at Notre Dame, had an opportunity to sit down with him as well at some spring practices. There is not a coach. I mean, he gets so much respect from his players. He's a great recruiter. He's real. He's transparent. The players love him. The same thing with Coach Klink as well. And now you're not going to have them. What's Will Johnson thinking right now as a corner? That's what he came to be a part of that defense and to be coached by McDonald, and then it was Mentor and Coach Klink as well. And now all the people that you came in with coaching wise are gone. That's why people always say commit to the school and not the coach. And so I've never seen anything like it, man. I just have never seen anything like it. And the Michigan fans I've talked to are not necessarily happy about it. And they all feel a certain way for Sharon, like he's been kind of put in a really, really tough spot. And that's unfortunate. But like you said, you make a deal with a certain being in our universe, then, certain things will happen to you. And it's part of me is like, it sucks, but then part of me is like, well, you get what you get. And man, I'm dumbfounded that there have been this many coaches that would leave, and not old coaches either. These guys are young, like they're young coaches that are Michigan men, and they left after they won a natty. So why not try to come back and win another one?
Yeah, I mean, that staff was fairly young. That's the crazy thing to look at it. I mean, and honestly, I rag on the guy a lot, and I always will. But Harbaugh really was the straw that stirred that drink. For whatever reason, those dudes all bought in. That's why they were there. If whatever is going on with Mike Hart, is going on, if he walks away, I mean, that dude is a tried and true Michigan man.
Yes, he is.
0-4. but he
And
he
throw that
still
in
came
there.
back. Oh, always.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. Obviously the only comparison we as Ohio State fans can really make is Urban's short tenure with the Jaguars. There was so much talk that he was going to take Pantoni and Mick and Hartline. Urban didn't take anybody
Yeah,
as
he
far
took
as
he had Ryan
primarily.
yeah, Stamper. That was the
Yeah,
only Stamper, and he had Schlegel, and Schlegel was only with us for a short period of time. I don't even know if Schlegel was here with Urban at all.
maybe one. And Stamper was a loss. Stamper's another one of
Yeah,
those dudes that was very, very highly thought of.
yeah.
And speaking of that, I did send my resume to OSU this week to be Pantoni's assistant. They did
I
post that.
saw that. I
Um,
saw that.
I don't expect a phone call, but just throwing that out there. So, Mark, if you decide to check us out, hit me up. Uh, our friends,
I know another Marionaire that's qualified for that job too. He helps out with National Women's Soccer League. So DeVal, if you see this, Ohio State's got an opening, man.
yeah, come home.
Yeah.
I hit on Bama. We'll touch base on that real quick because Bama affects Ohio State too.
Yeah.
When they hired DeBoer, everybody's like, you're hiring a dude with no ties to the South, and he brought Grubb as OC with him, who has left already as well and is going to the Seahawks. There's a very real chance Ohio State ends up with the top 3 players in the state of Alabama in the class of 25,
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
The Buckeyes going to the deep South and
Yes, I
pulling
mean
guys out of
that's
Alabama's
Louisiana.
backyard.
That's Louisiana, Alabama territory. I mean, you're
Yeah.
going to the Bayou and beyond.
But
So
that
yeah,
goes to show the state of college football. I mean, the NIL, without there not really being too many guardrails on the way that it's ran. And, some of these coaches are like, hey, if I'm going to coach professional football, then I'm going to go to the NFL where it's just football all the time. And I actually have an off season, like I actually don't
I
need
get
to
a
be around
vacation.
I get a vacation. I don't have to be around the guys 24/7. Like, like that's what you're starting to see. And man, it's just crazy. But hopefully we don't see that with the Buckeyes. Hopefully we just keep bringing in 5-star recruits and some legendary coaches, and hopefully we can go win a natty this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully, next week we are able to cover what we wanted to cover this week until coaching carousel hit us again.
Yeah.
We're going to start breaking down, the class of 24. Start with the offensive guys. Should lead to some pretty interesting Mount Rushmores, I think,
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty excited for those.
Yeah.
I threw it out this morning. We didn't get a ton of response because I threw it out so late. Said
Yeah.
we could do a couple questions. The one we hit on was Chip Kelly stuff.
Yep.
With it being Super Bowl Sunday, we did get asked flats or drums. I'm taking flats all day.
Was that Brandon? That had
It
to be
was.
Brandon, right?
It was.
Of course, had to be my family. I believe it or not, I'm a drum guy. I am a drum guy. My whole family's all flats, but I'm a drum guy. That's me.
I mean, honestly, I'm a Tinder guy. If we're really getting technical
You're
about
being
it,
real technical. Me too.
Yeah. So yeah. Today's Mount Rushmore is a little different. We've always been player based.
Yeah.
But since we did so much coach talk today, obviously when you go head coaches, it's too easy.
It's way too easy.
So we went assistant coaches today.
Yeah.
And obviously this, you could throw, if you're going whole body work, obviously, you've got to throw Nick Saban, Bo Schembechler. I mean,
yeah.
Lou Holtz. There's so many you could throw out
so
there.
Many.
But obviously I didn't go that way. I actually went 2 offensive guys, 2 defensive guys.
Okay.
I'm real interested to see how our lists correspond today.
Okay. All right.
An honorable mention, even though he's not technically a coach, I'm going to go with Mark Pantoni as an honorable mention.
That's a great honorable mention.
Pantoni is a G. I mean, and the guy has impeccable music taste.
Yes.
he's much like me. He listens to everything.
Yeah.
He'll be talking Zach Bryan one day and start talking Drake and 2 Chainz the next.
Yeah.
So without further, no order. First we go with Mensa Tom Herman.
Okay.
Absolutely scumbag of a human being if you believe everything that you hear, but football wise, you can't go wrong.
Oh man.
What he did with our offense.
Oh yeah. It was
And I'll give the
special.
guy credit. When he took the Houston job, he stayed
Yeah.
and won a natty. And you come in thinking that you're gonna have Braxton, and then you go to JT, so you have to tinker things a little bit. And then you're getting ready for the most important stretch of the season, and JT goes down, and now you go to Dale, who is nowhere near the runner that either one of those guys were.
No.
So we'll go Texas Tom.
Okay.
Who also has been the butt of a lot of Zach Smith jokes, and
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah.
that's a whole
that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah. Second, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Mark D'Antonio.
Okay. All right.
That 0-2 defense won a natty. I mean, the offense did not win that natty.
No, they didn't.
So that's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
Sticking along the defense, we hit a spot. It was like 2017-18 that we needed to really put the stamp on the defense, and we go get Chris Ash.
Yeah.
Brings the rugby style tackle.
Good call.
Really tried to limit the pass game.
Yep.
Did a lot of good things. Another dude who I know somebody who worked in the mortgage industry when Ash came to town. And when he signed the papers, he's like, I don't care what it costs. I'm only staying here 2 years. I mean, he knew that he was going to be moving on. And then you can't have an assistant coach list and not put Brian Hartline on it. It's too easy.
I agree
with what he's done. So those are my 4.
Okay. All right. Fun Tom Herman fact. You talk about Drake. I, at one point in my life, spent a lot of money on a lot of Lil Wayne and Drake tickets. And I spent a lot of money to sit in the 3rd row of a Drake concert with Kendrick Lamar opening up for him at the Shot. It's fantastic. In my same row was Mark Pantoni and Tom Herman, and they were living their absolute best life. I will just say that it was pretty cool.
Kendrick Lamar is so underrated. Can we just talk about that? I mean, honestly, I would rather see Kendrick than Drake.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So yeah, this isn't going to shock anybody. I'm going to stick with all defensive coaches. That is, I'm a defensive guy, man. So you win championships with defense, and the 4 guys I got, I think, were pretty freaking good. D'Antonio is my first one. Mark D'Antonio, like you said, I have on my notes right here. We don't win a natty without him. I think he was special. I think he was fantastic. He also hired Coach Hinton. So I will never shy away from my love for Coach D'Antonio. And then you hear about his former players. They respect him so much. So I always like to hear about that. The next one, Larry Johnson. I mean, the guys that he's coached swear by him. And as I think I'm a player's coach, I try to take the feedback from the players and have that dictate where my coaching goes from there. I think he does that. I think the players do have real feedback when they're working with him, and I think he truly tries to work things to their best interest. And obviously he's been a pretty good recruiter between the Boses and Chase Young and the Jonathan Coopers and those guys that he developed, who may not have been the most highly touted guys, but the Devon Hamiltons, Ty Hamiltons, those guys, I think he gets the best out of everybody on the defensive line. So LJ's up there for me. I was hesitant to do this, but I love his scheme for my next guy, Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley, gosh, the year he was here was awesome. Being able to go to those spring practices and just to see the way that he did things and the way that he taught and the way that he coached and the way that he recruited, I just felt like, man, if we could have kept him for a few more years, our defenses would have been elite. That national championship we lost to Alabama, I think we are in a game at least against them if we have somebody like that. So Jeff Hafley's up there for me as a defensive backs guy. He's one of those people that I view as like the upper echelon of defensive backs coaches. And the last one for me is Luke Fickell. Coach Fick, I said it in an earlier episode. He took time out of his day to pour into a young coach. In 2011, I had no idea what the heck I was talking about. He took time to kind of pour into me a little bit, and I love that about him. My favorite quality about him, though, and it's got nothing to do with anything he did for the Buckeyes. It's just the coolest thing. When when Marcus Freeman was he was at Kent State, I believe. I can't remember which MAC school he was at.
Under Coach
One of
Hazel, yeah.
Yeah, under Coach Hazel. He came back to the Ohio State Football Clinic and was one of the keynote speakers in one of the bigger rooms, and he was talking about defensive philosophy and linebacker play. Luke Fickell, defensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, is not sitting in the back. He is sitting in the front row taking notes, and the second Coach Freeman got off the stage, he went straight to Coach Fickell, and Coach Fickell gave him feedback before Coach Freeman talked to anybody else. And for Marcus Freeman to respect Coach Fickell in that way tells me that Coach Fickell is a freaking dude and a developer of men. So Coach Fickell will always be up there for me. I think, the 6 and 7 season, he was kind of given the short end of the stick, but he still found a way, to get us bowl eligible. He stuck around, and I know him and Urban didn't always get along, but he's a true Buckeye, and he stuck it out for a while. And, Coach Fickell is always somebody that I will admire. But you did a great job with the Pantone, man, the honorable mention. Like that's a good one, man. That's
D'Antoni's
a good
a
one.
dude, man. I mean, and can we shout out James Franklin for thinking that Larry Johnson was not a necessity to have on that staff?
Absolutely. Like what?
Like
unbelievable.
Again, there are guys that walk in and think they're the smartest guy in the room. And, obviously James Franklin thought that he could go find somebody better. And I couldn't tell you the last time they beat us for a D-line recruit. So,
yeah.
Thanks again, James Franklin. You're
Yes.
a real stud. And they're,
we greatly
honestly,
appreciate it.
You could give Ryan Day, a spot on that
Absolutely,
list.
Yep.
But Hafley, I mean, I loved that year. I mean,
yeah,
I make no bones about it. Despite the tumultuous things that have happened, I am a huge Damon Arnett fan.
Yeah.
And under Hafley, Damon Arnett was a stud.
Yeah, he was a dog.
He was a dog. I haven't talked to Damon lately, but I hope that he really does get a second crack. He's still putting in the work. He is killing it in the rap game though. So yeah, Hafley, awesome talk. And honestly, another dude you could put on there, love him or hate him, but when you look at the tone he set in that wide receiver room, Zach Smith did great things. I mean, same thing how you talk about like the respect and the love that players have for D'Antonio. The guys that played for Zach Smith love him.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Thomases, the Johnny Dixons, and those guys didn't necessarily, even Thomas, had flashes at Ohio State, but nobody knew he was going to be the best wide receiver in the league.
No.
So yeah, that's an awesome topic. I think that was cool. And we could dive into, we both know enough about the program. You could dive into support staffers at some point, and we might. You never know.
We could.
Shout out Justin Coomey, Marion Air.
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, that's all we've got for this week. I think though. Any closing words on Super Bowl Sunday as we sit here, even though this won't show till Monday.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday. I'm rocking with the Niners. I'm a big Brock Purdy fan. Coach Campbell at Iowa State's one of my favorite coaches to study. And obviously Brock Purdy played out there, so I'm rooting for the Niners. I obviously wish the Browns were playing, but it is what it is, man. I want to see the Niners knock the Chiefs down a little bit. So, what about you, man?
I'm rolling with the Niners as well.
There we go.
Chasing Nick. You know, I do love Travis Kelce though.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox for about 30 seconds. And the amount of grown ass men that we are seeing right now hating on Travis and Taylor Swift is just mind
sad,
blowing.
man.
Like, as a girl dad, you get it. Like,
Yeah. Trust me, I do.
when girls get all in,
Yeah.
like I look at our boy BP and his family.
Yeah.
That is a Chiefs family right now because of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Who cares what the TV
Who
cameras
cares?
show? Would we be mad if we were watching the Lions and they were showing Eminem all the time?
No.
I wouldn't.
No.
Like,
No.
so yeah, go Niners, but I hope Travis balls out too. And hopefully this week slows down a little bit on the Buckeye Nation front so we can dive into some recruiting stuff next
That'll
week.
be fun. That'll be fun.
I'm excited for that one. Get those couple episodes knocked out. And then don't forget, thanks everybody for the support as always. We did cross 100 subscribers on YouTube this week.
Big time.
It's cool to see.
It is, man. It is.
When we get to 200, we're going to do the Sean Wade signed 8x10 giveaway. I'm currently surrounded by about 30 stacks of football cards. So who knows what else we might drum up, case in point, we're sitting here with Dallin Hayden stuff. I mean,
yeah.
So yeah, just keep liking, subscribing, comment, and keep bumping the algorithm.
Yeah. Hey, one quick shout out before we get off here. Joanne Slater, my mama bear, 6 months, no cigarettes. She's killing it. I'm proud of her. My youngest daughter, Eva, is 7 months old, and she will never know that my mom smoked cigarettes, which is one of the things that I am like super proud of. So keep killing it, Mom. I know it ain't easy because you watch our kids and they're bad as hell sometimes, but I appreciate you so much. I love you. I'm so proud of you.
Keep killing it, Mama Slate. We're proud of you.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.